only visible to you. Okay, sorry. I'm still new to this platform we've got going on here. On Facebook, I'm doing Be Live, which means I have somebody else streaming from another location. And on Instagram, I don't have the option to stream to both right now. So I'm going to kind of try and do both. Before I get into that, we are doing the newsletter still, and that is coming out tomorrow morning. If you haven't signed up for it yet, you can still do that on turobuzz.com, or on the Facebook group, you can head over to the menu on the main page at the bottom and sign up there. So we've got crafts and activities and recipes and music stuff. So whatever we can find that complies with the current health restrictions that we have is what you're going to get in the newsletter. And we're very open to suggestions about hearing what you have been doing in your own household to keep with social distancing, or if you're isolating, what are you doing to pass the time? What recipes do you like? What games are you watching? What movies? What games are you watching, playing? Anything new, fun websites? So newsletter comes out tomorrow if you haven't signed up for it already. So I don't think there's really any other updates than that, because usually I give a rundown of, hey, these are the things that are happening this weekend. But I think we all know what's happening this weekend, even though it's Easter. Really curious to hear what people are doing for Easter. But tonight, we are all about the small businesses. So I have Jason Steele, who I'm going to bring on here shortly. And he is the Business Development Officer for the Truro and Colchester Partnership for Economic Prosperity, TPEP, we also call it, TCPEP, sorry. Just a little background on them, if you aren't familiar. I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of work with them, and they have been great. They got online around 2018, and they are a partnership between local businesses, municipalities, and the province. And together, they're driving economic development all throughout Colchester County. They're led by a board of directors, which are done by local business people. And the three main things that they do is they promote Truro and Colchester as a great place to live, work, and do business. They help support business growth and innovation, and they're helping attain and attract workers to the area. You hear them a lot around physician recruitment is something big on their list, which of course is a priority for everybody in Nova Scotia right now. And they have a lot of business support services, such as what we're doing tonight with Jason. So on Instagram, I can't bring him on here, but you will get to hear him talking. And if you want to ask questions on what you hear, I'll be watching and we can ask over him. So bear with me while I do this. And show and stream. Hey!
Hey, I saw the 3, 2, 1 countdown.
I know, right? It's nerve-wracking. Welcome to Live at our respective Hives in the new era of Live at the Hives. I missed the little studio, but this is still pretty nice.
Yep.
All right, Jason. So tonight we are talking about the small businesses. So obviously, a lot of us, including myself, have had to close down. Oh, Aaron Emery of Old Road Barbecue says, thanks for making this happen. Thanks for tuning in, bud. And hopefully this is helpful for you as well. So yeah, a lot of us have closed down. A lot of businesses have had to modify so that they can stay open and what they can do as far as maintaining their business with the current restrictions that we're under. And a lot of people are wondering what funding they can apply for, what help there is for them, how they can pivot their business. And that's what we want to talk about tonight, right?
Yep. I can certainly understand. I've been a business owner. I've worked for startups. I've also worked for Fortune 500 companies, but I've worked for the gamut. And this crisis, it's unprecedented, obviously. So we're dealing with a lot of businesses on the spectrum, some businesses that have lost revenue, complete revenue overnight, sadly. Other businesses that actually, a small few that actually are taking an opportunity where this actually can do different things for them. So they're able to support some different initiatives under the crisis, and some really wonderful things happening from business that are giving back.
Awesome. I'm just answering a question here. Sorry.
Yep.
Yes. And I know there's a lot of talk about funding and what things that you're able to apply for. And I know I don't want to speak for all business owners, because I know we're all very different, and some people are very in love with the numbers and some are not. So as soon as I even hear the words crisis management forecasting tool, it's like, So what is that exactly?
What is that? Well, it's pretty simplistic, actually, the way that we've actually put it together. I've worked with a lot of business owners in our Colchester Truro region, even business owners across Canada in a previous work life. And a lot of small, medium-sized businesses may not do cash flow forecasting. Believe it or not, they may definitely not do monthly cash flow forecasting. And really what that is understanding what revenue, so what cash is coming in, and understanding what expenses, what cash is going out. So cash flow forecasting, and on a monthly basis, allows you to see that in a little bit greater detail, granularity. And when you're in a crisis, you definitely want to get deeper into your business to understand, because this crisis, unfortunately, is not going to be weeks. It's going to be months of impact for some businesses, sectors. It may be 1 year, 2 years, beyond. So right now, we're recommending in the next 3 to 6 months, do a forecast from baseline, what you were looking at having in the normal business environment, and now what's going to impact your revenue and your expenses in the next 3 to 6 months minimum. And we've developed something that will hopefully help with that.
If anyone's wondering, I'm actually making notes while you're writing this, because as far as I'm concerned, you're talking to me right now as someone that doesn't know how to do these things on my own. And I'm going to take full advantage of having someone who will actually talk me through what I need to do.
Sure.
Okay, so from baseline, okay. All right. So if you don't have a copy of this already, I know Jason has worked with a lot of our local businesses and has sent it out to a number of people already. I'm going to, once this broadcast is finished and goes live on the Facebook page, I'm going to release a blog post that has a link back to this video if you want to watch it again, and also a link to download the Excel spreadsheets that we're going to be going over here tonight. So watch for that blog on TruroBuzz.com after this goes live to get your own copy. So Jason, if you want to say anything else before we throw it up, or do we want to throw up that Excel sheet?
I'm just going to say a couple things. First, let me put a couple disclaimers out there. I'm not an accountant or a financial expert by any means, but I do advise a lot of businesses in this situation, small, medium-sized businesses in our Colchester and Truro area, that need to look at cash flow analysis, and in a crisis really need to understand their business even deeper. So I am doing that, but I'm not an expert on the financial side. So the tool is pretty simple. I also wanted to put a disclaimer out there that, well, it's not a disclaimer, just a little bit further explanation that the partnership is not a government organization. We're sponsored by municipalities, and we thank them for that. We're sponsored by the province. We're sponsored by private business through the Chamber of Commerce and Millbrook First Nation. So all of them have funded us, but we are not a government organization. We actually take our leadership and guidance from a board of directors, as you mentioned earlier, Alicia, that are made up of business owners in our region. So I want people to understand that as well.
For sure.
And we're guided by those board of directors and our CEO. Many people know and have seen him in videos with you, and is Brendan. And we have 2 other people in our office as well, Matthew Berrigan, and Lindsay's just joined us to help with physician recruitment and some other stuff.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And I feel super fortunate to have worked with everybody on that team at different points and for different projects. And I could not be happier to live in a place that has a regional enterprise network like the TCPEP.
Yeah, I mean, we've only been 2 years. There's several across the province, and we're striving towards being able to support businesses as much as possible on those 3 mandates that you talked about. And I just want to thank you, because I want to thank you for allowing us to be on this platform on a live feed, so that we can hopefully get to as many business owners as possible.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure to be able to offer it up for people to ask questions if necessary.
So I can definitely jump into the tool. I'm going to try to share my screen, so we'll make sure that this is all working. You can tell me on your end, or people can feedback through the comments if I've made a mistake. I'm just going to do that now.
Okay, so I'm going to show that in stream, and I'm going to take me out. And nope, hang on 1 second. So how do I change it?
I know there's a delay as well on my end, so I've got it up now.
All right, so you can still hear me?
I do.
Yep, perfect. So screen share is up there and you're good to go.
Perfect. All
And
right.
just a quick thing before Michael says thank you for this. Thank you for tuning in, Michael. And on Instagram, I know I can't screen share this with you and see the screens, but you are able to ask questions if you have them, if you're listening, and I can run them to Jason through here. And the Excel sheets, as well as this live video with Jason, is going to be available on the TruroBuzz.com blog after we're finished this session. So keep an eye on that. Okay.
Perfect. We're also going to have a bit of a Q&A session on any questions from the tool, as well as questions just in general and funding, if I can help with that. We've heard some new clarity on the wage subsidy this week and other types of funding programs. So we can certainly take some questions there, Alicia, through the comment or the chat section, and you'll monitor that so that we can see what people are asking. So let me start with the fact that we've been working with a lot of businesses during this crisis. As I said, we're very empathetic. We know this is unprecedented. It's having a huge impact on individuals as well as business owners, and there's a lot of things changing on a daily basis. The three primary things, there's a lot of concerns, a lot of anxiety and stress, I understand, but the three primary concerns or worries that I've come across in general, on average, with every business has been these three things. How do I manage my revenues and expenses during the crisis? How do I determine what I should or can do with my employees? A lot of these businesses are like family. What's happening with employees? I know some businesses have had to lay them off and what have you. And number three, what funding opportunities might I qualify for as a business owner? What's the criteria? What's the timelines? And those types of things. In this tool, I believe if done correctly, you can have help with two of those things. So definitely on the managing the revenues and expenses, because it is a cash flow tool. And the way it was set up is meant to allow you to see at the end what type of gap you have so that you can determine what amount of funding you might need in that time period, or what alternative revenue combined with funding or credit might you need to get you through that period. So on this first screen, the first worksheet, it is an Excel spreadsheet, and it's got several worksheets that are interlinked. On this first worksheet, it talks about the forecast. And I do want to shout out to Simplicity Designs, Matt Symes. I've been on several of his webinars. He's been helping a lot of businesses at no cost and taking them through different things to manage the crisis. And I asked for his permission because this really aligned with what our TC PEP is encouraging businesses to do. And I thought he had a nice sort of 3 C's simple model to think about when you're forecasting in a crisis. And those 3 C's are what you see on the screen: the customers, cash, and constraints. And that's how this actual spreadsheet is set up. There's a customers tab, there's a constraints tab, and there's a cash flow tab. When you're looking at customers, we are encouraging all business owners to try to go into a deeper understanding of what's happening by customer, at least with their most loyal or their high key customers that drive the majority of their revenue. A lot of business owners know that 80% of revenue typically comes from 20% of the customers. So that 20% is really important to determine what is the impact in those businesses or those clients I have, or those customers I have. So actually reaching out to them, being empathetic and asking them, how's this impacting you? And what's the relationship we're going to have in the next few months? Is there going to be a deferral on things that you were ordering from me through my retail shop? Is there going to be a partial payment of accounts receivables that's outstanding, or can you even do that right now? And having that frank conversation is important, because on the customers tab will show you, you're going to enter information that's going to link to the cash flow forecast to allow you to see the impact on your business. So in looking at the types of things that you want to ask how much revenue is going to be impacted, from which services or products. If I have multiple types of product lines or different types of services, what segments are going to be impacted most, and from which customers. Then we move on to cash. So everyone knows they're going to be looking at they probably already have, they're looking at their current dollars, what's in the bank, access to credit, current access to credit, what do I have, anticipated revenue, that's going to come through the customer connections, any accounts receivable that are outstanding, any that are going to be delayed through this further because of the crisis. And then on the constraints tab and the constraint sort of thought process, we want to look at your specific business and your sector in terms of what's happening with my supply chain. Am I going to have access to materials or equipment or things that I need to do my business, repairs or what have you, to be able to stay open? Am I affected by, obviously, the non-essential service shutdown? But can I do things remotely? Can I tap into technology? A lot of companies are being very creative.
Yes.
Restaurants, as you know, are doing delivery. There's lots of opportunity to still drive some revenue potentially, or alternative revenue that fits your model, but you haven't maybe done well in the past because now you need to tap into technology. The other couple things, and this is not an exhaustive list, it's just to get your sort of the ideas flowing in terms of each of those sections. You want to look at your service product mix, skills and hours that are there. Are there any constraints in labor, obviously, staffing, and customers? Can you still do what you're asking, or they're asking you to do? So that's sort of just the principle of the 3 C's: customers, cash, and constraints. If I look at those, I'm going to have a good handle on this crisis if I do it well, to determine what I might need to focus on and what I might need to tap into as all these programs are coming out.
Right.
Does anybody have any questions any comments on the chat yet? Because I certainly don't want to wait until the end and just have me blabbering.
No, just some thanks for doing it so far. And I did want to touch on what you said about the website, though. It amazed me how many businesses I know locally who didn't have websites or didn't have online shopping on their website, but now have gone into offering things, opening up e-commerce on their sites.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that happening. We're seeing some businesses that are very surprised at the amount of sales they're getting from that as well. And if we think about it, at least Stacy, my wife, and I are very focused on trying to shop local as much as possible. And now with this crisis, we're very sensitive to people shutting down or not being able to do things under the normal terms of business. So if there are delivery options or if there are e-commerce options, we're certainly looking for it. Obviously, we don't, everybody's situation is different on a cash basis and disposable income or what they have to stash right now, but there are essentials and things that you may still be able to support locally that they're offering through these e-commerce or alternative means.
Lori Nearing said, a bit more difficult for a travel agent as she is the owner and operator of Memory Bank Travel, but I will do my best to stay alive. Having other small businesses helping by liking and sharing my posts would go a long way. Support each other. Absolutely, Lori, and glad you're still kicking.
Yeah, there's a sector, tourism, travel, this is a sector that's having obviously significant impact and will have significant impact into the high season. We don't know how long this will last and what type of behaviors will change. We know behaviors will change in the short term to midterm. How long will they stay, and what will happen if there's a rebound of COVID-19 in the fall? I have heard of businesses in tourism. Now, travel's a little bit different, but I have heard of them also doing some very creative things, because if you think about it, the domestic travel, when this does rebound, is going to be likely higher than the international travel that we're accustomed to, or getting people from out of province, because everybody's going to be in the same situation where they may not want to travel as much outside. However, you will have some people that will be okay with traveling outside. And for a travel agent, I think potentially we have to look at what's the short term and what's the rebound, and how do we take advantage of that rebound when it happens? How do we prepare for that when it happens?
Yes, and she said she totally agrees. And I know Truro Buzz is very excited to launch some more North Shore tourism options as soon as we're able to not have to self-isolate and leave our communities.
Yeah, out of bounds, right?
That's
So that'll be an opportunity, and I think there are some interesting things domestically and in our province that people will want to probably travel locally and see our province more than they've done in
Oh,
the past.
100%. So, Sarah, got all the questions. You're good to go.
So I'm going to move on to the customers tab. I'm going to blow this up in a second because I know it can be small on some screens. I just want to show the whole summary to take you through what this specifically is looking to do is, like I said, diving deeper into the customer. So if you have these key customers that are driving 80% of your revenues or your sales, then trying to reach out to those, putting the name of the customer here or the business, whether you're B2B or you're a customer-focused business. And if you have multiple segments, there's an option to also, this example shows retail and wholesale. So this is a fictitious company that is doing both sales on a retail side and a wholesale side. And the reason that we've put that in to be able to segment out the businesses, the business segment, sorry, is that you can do a drop-down sort or filter and be able to see if one segment is actually impacted more than another. And to your point, if you have alternative means through e-commerce or what have you that you haven't done a lot, well, there may be some additional revenue you put in here to offset some of the loss.
We did have a comment from Connie Barrett. Says parties and weddings are pretty much non-existent during this dealing with customers and offering to carry deposits forward to new dates. Should make for a pretty busy summer next year, but pretty sad for this summer. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I would agree. And I guess the big thing is how do you potentially deal with, like we said, that rebound where it might be, if it's not twice as busy, it might be 1.5 times as busy. It might, there might be creative things you got to think about in terms of capitalizing on as much as you can, because you can only do so much with so many people. So that's something that might have to be thought about.
For sure.
So I know there's a delay in showing the sheet and what have you. I just I sort of maximized it a little bit more. Alicia, do you see it now in a larger format?
Mine is harder because I have the 3 screens on mine because I'm the host. So
okay.
Yeah, if anybody could chime in and let me know on Facebook if you want to make the print a little larger to see on the screen that you're viewing it on, that would be helpful. But you could definitely start explaining it and I'll chime in if someone says to make it larger.
Okay, so I've actually expanded it a fair bit, and I just wanted to show a little bit more about what you would enter month by month. So when you put your key customer in, then you put the segment, and in the months that start in March, when this all happened, and go to the end of the year, you will want to put in the delta or the difference in terms of what that customer is telling you that either is going to defer in revenue, is going to decrease in revenue, be removed altogether. So you're trying to get a handle on month by month what potentially could be a loss in revenue or a gain in revenue. Right now, in the short term, a lot more people are seeing a loss. So if you're putting a loss into the cells under the month for that customer, you're putting in a dollar value with a minus. So you have to make sure you put that in the minus or a plus, because the connection to the spreadsheet on the cash flow is actually going to then self-calculate based on your baseline forecast what that impact is month by month in total. So it will sum everything up. The other thing that we have on this is you're going to be able to see total columns on the right-hand side and on the lower portion of the sheet, so that you can actually see totals by customer. So your total loss, or if it's a neutral or net gain over the course of March to December, then you'll see that on the right-hand side by customer. And you'll also see at the bottom by month what the actual net effect is that you're losing, neutral, or gaining in the months of March, April, May, June, and then going in, hopefully, into rebound. But that's, and I understand, I get a lot of comments, this is, obviously some of this is estimates. How do we, You're not going to know 100%. Well, that's why it's called forecasting. It's not going to be 100%, but it's going to be a lot clearer and better than pie in the sky or not doing that type of deeper drill down to determine, at least with the bigger customers, what that impact might be, so that you know what you're losing on that monthly basis. And like I said, what will self-calculate to determine what type of funding you might need or what type of alternative revenue you might need to make up for that.
Just hearing that alone about how much money you're losing that month is like, but true.
Yeah.
And lots of people said that it's a good size, so you're good.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So so that's this sheet. And there are formulas. I should say that many of these sheets are locked so that the auto calculation formulas don't get erased, because sometimes we can do that by accident, putting in a value where it shouldn't. But I have highlighted on the other sheets that we're going to look at, especially the cash flow. The gray highlights, which I'll show you in a few minutes, are things that are all auto-calculated, that are locked cells, and the white area, the white cells, are things that you can put numbers in yourself. And the sheet will have a password, so that I know that some companies may have to make changes, so the password will be included so that you can unlock that sheet with instructions. The last tab on this worksheet actually has instructions for all sheets and how to use the password to unlock cells if you do need to make some edits.
And just to let you know, on Instagram, or if you just tuned in on Facebook, Jason is walking us through a crisis management forecast tool that they've come up with the help of Simplicity Designs. And after this broadcast is finished, it's going to be going up in a blog post on TruroBuzz.com. So you'll be able to download the Excel sheets to try yourself. And you'll also be able to go to the link to the video if you need help going through what you actually have to do on them. So after the broadcast, TruroBuzz.com on a blog to get all of this information. And okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, it's not a big deal, but simplicity is really the 3 C's model on the first sheet that we took, just to try to make it clear for businesses. The rest of the sheet we've actually done at the partnership ourselves. It's the tool that we've created for this region that we're more than happy to share across the province or wherever it's going to be helpful for business owners. I'm not a guru in Excel, so this is not overly complicated, but there are auto calculation formulas, like I said earlier, that are locked cells that will interconnect with the cash flow so that it saves you some time and allows for accuracy in terms of how this will be self-calculated. So the third sheet, the second C, is constraints. And I've just opened that up, so there will be a slight delay, I suspect. But I will just start with the fact that constraints, as we talked earlier, are going to be things that are very unique to your business, to your sector, to your business model. So they are going to be things that you'll need to change or add in yourself or remove. In this particular example, we talk about a retail wholesale company. So the big constraints or the impacts on 2 of the topic areas being service product disruption and supply chain management are put into this sheet as an example. Can we see that? Can we see the sheet now? I just want to go into some specifics and make sure everybody can see it, because I know there's some delay sometimes on viewing. I
haven't had anyone chime in yet, but if it's the same size as the last one, everyone said the print was great.
Okay, so on the constraints tab, in this particular example, we have a retail wholesale company that actually is going to have a reduction in labor. So they are going to reduce their labor by 25%. So putting that into that column is actually going to be interconnected with the worksheet on the cash flow that I'll show you in a few minutes, that will reduce the 25% automatically in the COVID-19 scenario versus the baseline scenario in the months of March, April, and May, because that's what they anticipate having that impact on. And then under supply chain management, because this retail wholesale company has done most of their stuff face-to-face and not on e-commerce, as Alicia had mentioned, a lot of companies are trying to get more on e-commerce in this situation to be creative. This particular fictitious company is also doing that and is seeing 1,000% increase from what they were doing delivery and transportation cost wise because of the no contact and the crisis scenario that you have to deal with. So this particular March to August impact on delivery and transportation costs will actually show 1,000% calculation automatically in the COVID-19 scenario cash flow forecast that I'll show in just 2 minutes. So there's not a lot of locked cells here. If somebody does want the sheet and gets downloaded from Truro Buzz when we post it, and they have any questions, they can always reach out to myself at the Truro and Colchester Partnership. My email is jason@tcpep, the acronym for Truro Colchester Partnership for Economic Prosperity.ca. And you can reach out with any questions, or I can give guidance on how to put certain things into that sheet that affect your specific business. Obviously, when you're doing your own business, you're going to need to remove these that aren't going to impact you. And if there is a labor change, you can put the percentage in there, which will self-calculate, or you can make the edits yourself, or like I say, reach out to me and we can talk about what that is. So right now I'm seeing a little menu. Sorry, I got a little bit lost there because there was a menu. It was actually over my cash flow, and I had to minimize it. I was trying to see how to do that. So now I'm going to move to cash flow, which is really the essence of this tool. That's probably going to take a few minutes or a few seconds to load as well. I have maximized that a little bit because I want to show the whole thing, and then I'll maximize it a little bit further. I'll just talk about cash flow for a few minutes as this loads up for people with the delay in streaming. I've actually worked with, like I said, hundreds of businesses over the course of my career, helping them with many things, and cash flow is always an important thing to discuss. And it surprises me sometimes on how many businesses don't necessarily monitor their cash flow on a monthly basis. I know that business owners have a lot on their plates, but it is really important to get a handle on your business from a monthly cash flow basis. And in a crisis, it's that much more important. So if you had a tool that was a cash flow forecast on a baseline scenario under the normal business environment, then you would be able to update that. What we've done here is we've actually put 2 scenarios of a cash flow with identical topic areas and different descriptions for those revenues and expenses, the line items for expenses, so that you can actually see a comparison on one sheet that is going to, like I say, self-calculate with other stuff you put in on what the impact on revenue or sales will be in the months that the crisis happens, and how you will impact, trying to manage your expenses or the increase in expenses that may come in certain areas that you have to offset in other areas. And in doing that, I'm going to show you in a few minutes how that spits out the ability to do a break-even analysis, which is basically looking at covering your expenses with your sales or revenues, which is not normally what you want to do. You want to have profit, but in a crisis, you want to at least try to cover your expenses with your revenues. And in this particular crazy situation of COVID-19, it may not even be possible for many. So that's where the funding support comes in. And in looking at the gap in cash flow that is lost in each month, you'll be able to put values in to determine how to get to break even, which will total up the amount of funding or alternative revenue or credit facility through the bank that you may have to tap into to survive the crisis and then rebound on the other end. I suspect with that lengthy explanation, everybody can see what I have up now, which is the cash flow projections without COVID-19. So on row number 2, you see a green highlighted description that shows cash flow projections without COVID-19. So that's your baseline forecast. If you've done monthly cash flows, you can simply cut and paste from other Excel spreadsheets or other documents, or put it in from a printed copy that you have. If you have not done a cash flow, then it's good to understand what would have been the baseline. So if I was expecting $243,000 in sales, which is what in essence this company, this fictitious company, is looking at, if I didn't break that down by months in the past, I'd like to do that for this baseline. And I can do that through, financial records that I have, through my accountant or bookkeeper, or the systems on computers that you use for yourself, or any sort of historical records. And that will then allow you to see in greater detail the comparison month by month when we look at the COVID-19 cash flow sheet. For people that haven't done cash flows on a monthly basis, it's pretty straightforward. So there's sometimes other lines under sales or revenue. You could have your accounts receivable there, anything that brings cash into the business. I've made it simple. I've just put it as sales. You can tweak that. You can change that cell depending on the nature of your business, but it is the cash or revenue that's coming into the business on a monthly basis. So in this fictitious scenario, the company had $15,000 of sales coming in January, $15,000 in February. Then they increased their forecast, what they think they're going to achieve in March, went to 17.5, then 18, then 20, then 24.5, etc. And that totals what that total cash flow will be coming into the business, so the revenue coming in. Then we look at the cash out, and that's all the expenses. So in this section, you're going to actually have some descriptions that may not fit your business. I tried to put in sort of the general things, the average things that fit most businesses, but you can change any of these descriptions, and you can also add a row. As long as you add the row in the white space, it will still allow for the auto calculation of the formulas in the gray highlighted areas for everything else. So you add a row with a new description, a new line item that may not be included here in that white center space, and that will allow still to have auto calculation everywhere else. So examples of, obviously every business owner knows what's coming out of the business on an expense side, whether it's accounting and bookkeeping, advertising, marketing, bank charges, there's postage and courier, phone and internet, office expenses, legal, whatever those line items are. Again, this is a fictitious example, so you'll want to erase that data and put what's specific to your business. And if we look at the bottom portion where it's gray highlighted in row 37 and in row 39 to 41, those are auto-calculated total expense line items for cash out. And then 3 sections that say opening cash, cash in, cash out, which is the net effect of your revenues and your expenses, and closing cash. This is going to be really important when we go to the COVID-19 sheet, because those auto formula calculations are going to go into that sheet. And then when you change any business expenses that you might be able to reduce over the COVID-19 period, that will show the impact on your business. And it will likely, for majority of businesses, in March, in April, possibly May and June, show a negative cash flow. So there'll be negative values there. And in that, it will help you to understand by month, what's my loss? Can I manage that loss with my existing cash, or do I need to do something with the funding or credit facility? And can I do something in alternative means of technology, or to get to customers under this technically lockdown in a lot of situations for a lot of businesses? So I will scroll down to the COVID-19 sheet, and that may take a couple seconds, but it has the same line items, and it should have any of the same line items that you add or change for your own business. But it does have one extra row, which is a yellow highlighted row that actually has, it's on row 55. It has cash required. And that is going to be filled in after you have filled in the COVID-19 expenses and after you've filled your customer sheet with the revenue that's changed, either negative or positive by month by customer, because that will then self-calculate the other areas of the sheet to determine what I've just said earlier on the net loss or neutral or gain by month.
And just to chime in here quickly, if you're just tuning in to us, we're talking with Jason of the Truro and Colchester Partnership for Economic Prosperity, and he is walking us through a crisis management forecast tool for small businesses. On Instagram, unfortunately, we couldn't stream it, but it is on Facebook, on Truro Buzz. But after this broadcast is done, both the Excel sheets as well as the link to the live will be available on trurobuzz.com if you want to download it and apply it to your own business and watch the video again on how to do it. And you've got some you've got some fans over here. Connie said it's a very helpful tool. You're doing a great job. Carrie said you're a gem for Colchester. And Greg said you're a rock star.
Oh, well, thank you. I've paid them only modestly for that, those plugs. Well, thank you. Seriously, thank you for those comments. We're doing our best to try to support all the business owners out in the community. And we certainly, any business owners that have just learned about us, above and beyond the cash flow forecast tool that we're showing today, if there's anything we can support you with, please reach out to us at the Truro and Colchester Partnership for Economic Prosperity. Again, my email is jason@tcpep.ca, and my cell phone number is 902-890-5095, 890-5095. Love to hear from you and be able to help in any way we can. Now I'm going to get to a little bit more explanation on the COVID-19 cash flow projection sheet. So we did go over the customer sheet, which is the input of plus or minus dollar values by month, by customer, of what the impact on your cash flow is going to be on your revenue side. That self-calculates from the baseline cash flow that you've completed up top in this sheet to the sales line on row 56 of the COVID-19 cash flow projection sheet or section, because this is all on the same sheet. And you'll notice the value here is less in March, not January and February, but in March, there's a significant decline that actually is showing $4,500, where I believe in March on your baseline forecast, if it was a normal business environment, this fictitious company was expecting $17,500 or somewhere in that vicinity, I think. So this example is going to auto-calculate, and I've deleted the yellow cash required row information because I want to show you what happens when it does auto-calculate at the bottom of that particular section for the COVID-19 forecast. Hopefully you're seeing this now, but I'll just start to talk about it. This particular scenario of this fictitious company, a retail wholesale company, is showing when everything's inputted and the auto-calculations done from the customer revenue sheet, that they're going to lose $6,958 in the month of March based on this crisis. That's the anticipated loss. So what am I going to do? With that loss, I've already looked at reducing my expenses as much as possible. The wages and salaries actually calculated down, you'll see, from $10,000 to $7,500. That's where that 25% decrease is. I actually had some added expenses because I had 1,000% shipping and transportation costs because I'm doing deliveries now. So that went from $50 to $550. I can't really do anything else in my other expenses, so I am going to lose $6,958 in the month of March if I do nothing different. So obviously some businesses are going to try their best to do alternative revenue or different types of technology that they can tap into, and many businesses will be shut down and not be able to do that. So that's where you'll see month by month what that loss is. In March, it's negative $6,958. In April, it's negative 54.94. And then in May, it goes down a bit, but it's still negative 25.66. And then negative 33.02, negative 8.62. And I'm seeing a bit of a rebound in the months after that on revenue to make up a little bit from losses, but certainly not the dramatic revenue that I was expecting as a high growth retail wholesale company. So I'm going back up to the row that says cash required now, and it's yellow highlighted. And because I just mentioned that March had a negative 69.58 cash out because of the decrease in revenues, I can enter now the value that will make that a break even. What we mean by break even is that no profit, no loss, pretty much neutral. So then you have it's negative 69.58. I'm just going to be rounding up. So I'm going to put $7,000 in that cash required. And that will then recalculate what my cash out is, or my cash loss, or my cash gain. On row 88, which I just scrolled down to, you'll be able to see that that actually now shows $42 in profit or in a gain, because we haven't taken in all our taxes and all the other things that we have to take out of the business. But we're looking at a neutral right now, covering our expenses from our revenues. Obviously, we may want to do more than that, so we may want to put another value in to try to have some profit and cover off taxes, etc. But I'm just right now showing the example on a break-even scenario. And if I put the other values in of rounding up again, so I put 5,500 in April because that's what it's calculating as my loss under the circumstance of the customer information I put in. And then I put in now 25.66 is what I would lose in May. So I'm actually going to round that up to 3,000. And in June, now I would be losing $3,302. I'm going to round that up to 3,500. And then in the last month of my loss in July, I'm going to be losing 862 under normal circumstances. In this crisis, I'm going to put $1,000. So that has been rounded up, and the total on the right-hand side in column O actually shows that I need cash of $20,000 if I suspect that the COVID-19 crisis will affect me from March to July with those losses based on what I've spoken to my customers about on the impact of my revenues and what I've managed with my expenses to be able to either decrease or add an expense based on operating under these circumstances.
So did you say, sorry to clarify, that so it's the $20,000 if you're unable to pivot your business to find other ways to do income, that's just as is, as you were operating, you would need $20,000 to get through those months?
That's right, and that's a great question, because cash required, although this tool is meant to look at several things like funding, to be able to rationalize for banks or organizations that are giving you funding, you'll be able to rationalize that you connected with your customers and found out as best as possible what the impact of your business on revenues will be in that short period of time, and what your expenses that you've decreased as much as possible will have an impact on your cash flow. The cash required will then show you what cash you need to be break even or neutral, but it's not necessarily, to your point, Alicia, it's not necessarily that I'm going to borrow $20,000.
Right.
Maybe I need to do something on an alternative revenue basis, be creative, like delivering the food. And then, although the scenario here is the normal scenario, I did mention that my delivery costs went up $550. So in this particular scenario, I believe, and I'm just saying under the fictitious example of this business that's retail wholesale, I can make $2,000 of that $7,000 under new mediums of delivery and what have you. So I could note that on that month, of the 7,000 cash required, I'm able to bring in 2,000. I forecast 2,000, so I really am going to need 5 in another scenario, like a credit facility or a government grant or a loan or what have you. In some scenarios, you may not be able to do that on an alternative revenue, so you may need to borrow or look at borrowing the $7,000 or taking advantage of some of the programs that are out there in different scenarios to add up to that amount or to ask for that amount. So now that it's calculated the $20,000, because you've entered the customer revenue on the customer sheet with revenues, both the negative effect and the positive effect, because when you see a rebound, hopefully that revenue is going to go back up. It may not go to where it was right away. It probably won't go to where it was right away for most businesses, but it will hopefully rebound because people will want to shop local, want to shop with you again. So you'll put some of those values in positive, and that actually will then, on the bottom portion, the very bottom right corner of row 89 and column O, is the absolute total now of your closing cash at the end of the year. So taking into effect everything here and putting in the cash required, whether that is alternative revenue or tapping into the guarantee program that the federal government has, right? The Canada Emergency Business Account. So I'm just giving one example. Here's a scenario where you have $40,000, up to $40,000 that can be borrowed through your traditional bank that you have a business account with. Obviously, there's going to be some criteria there, but they are going to loosen some of that criteria for the crisis. And the federal government is saying if you pay that back within 2 years, you'll be forgiven $10,000. So you'll pay 30 and have 40. So that may be a scenario where, in this case, you're going and asking for the $20,000 that you need, and you'll get 25% forgiven if you pay it back within the time period. In this scenario, because of the rebound revenue, you actually, and again, this is just fictitious, but you actually can see that the $20,000 that I either borrowed or got a grant or what have you, I'm actually cash flow positive by 24,288. So I actually can pay that 20,000 back if I wanted to, which likely I probably wouldn't pay all back right away, but I would still be net positive and be able to pay that back. If you're talking to an organization that's looking at providing you some funding, or especially a bank, then this allows them to see the work you've put in forecasting based on your baseline, your history, your historical financials, and touching base with your customers that are your loyal customers and the customers that are driving 80% of your revenues, to then determine what you really truly need, and it gives them a rationale, a solid rationale on what that is. And I'm going to go up to the very top and scroll over to columns Q to U. And this is another self-calculation. This will probably take a minute for people to see, but this is another auto calculation that actually then summarizes some of the information that would be helpful for funding organizations or for meeting some of the criteria in these programs. And this particular example shows that in the year, I have a net loss of $70,000, but my expenses also were decreased because I tried my best to lower expenses, but certainly not enough to make up the $70,000. So my revenue impact actually declined from my baseline, what I was forecasting without COVID-19, by 30%. And my expense impact, I was able to decrease by 4%. In the scenario where you have wage subsidies and may be able to access some of that to bring some staff back or what have you, and you have to meet a criteria, then, and again, this is just a fictitious example, and they only came out with the criteria just recently. It was more month over month from previous year or January, February of this year to March. Then they asked for certain percentages. They started with 30 and now they've revised the March figure to 15% loss and April and May to 30% loss. This would show you what that would be by month and overall. So it does help to provide a real nice understanding of what the impact on my business could be. Again, it won't be 100%, but it will be a lot better than doing it just in an annual basis and not really putting the time in to determine how the impact's going to be. Any other questions or comments there, Alicia?
We've got some more. Nitty said, thanks for doing it. Michelle said, well done and well explained, Jason. And I'm actually going to use this opportunity to say goodbye on Instagram because it boots me off live at an hour. So we weren't unable to stream onto this platform with Jason from the TC PEP, but there will be a blog live after this broadcast where you can get the forecast sheets for yourself, as well as a link to this video if you need any help, and Jason contact as well. So TruroBuzz.com at the blog will have all that information for you. And thank you for tuning in. And if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, you still have time. Comes out tomorrow. TruroBuzz.com. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in. I just wanted to show this last section because it does go down to much more granularity for some businesses that want to use it. This actually shows an average daily break-even revenue requirement. And it does auto-calculate based on what the worksheet for cash flow is. And if you had an impact for, let's say, April and May, where you had to close a couple days or the whole period, or you're trying to look at how many days in the week can I stay open with knowing what average revenue I might be able to make, well, it helps to calculate that from the numbers that you've put in. It's just a little bit of an added granularity for those that want to use it. I'm going to stop talking because I feel like I've talked a lot to go through this. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if we open it up for any comments or questions. Even outside of the worksheet, if people have some questions around funding or things that they want to comment on or ask us, I'm more than happy to try to answer some of those. I may not answer everything, but I'll do my best to do so.
I have seen the most question come up from people is wondering what they qualify for funding wise. Like some people who are still working a little bit, or some people that aren't working at all. That seems to be the biggest question I've come against people, business owners that I know.
So yeah, that's a big one because things are changing literally daily. Sometimes hourly, depending on what's coming out from the federal government or the provincial government. I can provide a bit of a recap either at this, here. I also can say that if you email either myself or you private message Alicia, we have been providing daily summaries, and we're trying to recap that all in one email for business owners because it is daunting. Especially with where do you go and all these links. So we do have a summary that comes out either daily or every other day, depending on what the changes are. And I can add you to that list so that you do have it with the links and the things that you can access yourself. And you can also, from that, always ask us for questions of clarity or what have you. So did you want me to sort of summarize some of the things that are out there, or do we want to just...
Definitely. Any resources I think anybody can get, absolutely throw it out there.
So this is certainly not exhaustive, but I would say the things that are being asked the most about for business owners and self-employed, obviously the EI program that they were going to do has now combined into the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, and that is eligible for self-employed. If you've actually stopped or had to stop your business and you're not getting any revenue, there's other criteria there. I'm just summarizing quickly that actual self-employment benefit is $2,000 a month for the period of time that they're anticipating this to have impact, which I believe is 16 weeks right now, but that could change. What I would say is if you have employees, they're also eligible for the Canada Emergency Response Benefit under certain circumstances, but in some scenarios, it might be better for them to apply for EI versus the Canada emergency response benefit because of the caps and the amounts that they actually get. So EI is 55% of your salary, of your insurable earnings. Depending on the salary level, they may get more money in EI than they would in the emergency benefit. But for self-employed, where you haven't traditionally been able to access EI, this is obviously something that you want to explore if you've been shut down and not been receiving revenue or what have you. There's also the Canada Emergency Business Account, which is a federal program, which I touched on just quickly, which is the $40,000. It's usually a line of credit, an operating line of credit. It goes through your bank. So your own business banking institution, you would contact that person that you deal with. And each banking institution is a little bit different on how they're doing this, but they do have some online applications processes. And most of them have sent out emails to clients. If you haven't received that, you can go to their website, and on their homepage, they're showing a link on what that process is if you want to access the Canada Emergency Business Account, which is up to $40,000 operating line with the potential of having $10,000 forgiven, or up to $10,000. It's 25% of what you access for money. And that would be forgiven if you pay it back within 2 years. If you don't pay it back within 2 years, then it goes into a 5% loan for a 3-year period, just so you know. I don't know if everybody's seen that yet, but that's how that works. Now, a lot of publicity is Bill Morneau actually came out today and was talking a lot about the wage subsidy program. Obviously, this is getting a lot of exposure and questions. They started with the wage subsidy program at 10%. You got a lot of feedback from business owners. I applaud the government for actually taking that feedback. It's still not perfect. We're hearing that, but they have increased that to 75%. But what people may not know is the 10% option is still there, still available. The 75% option does have certain criteria that the 10% option does not have. So you will want to look at that in terms of 75% is up to $847 per week, depending on salary and what have you, and there's no cap for employers on that program. Every employee could be that you have on staff, and it's backdated to March 15th. They did change the 30% loss for the month of March. It's now 15% loss, but that may not fit everybody as well. That was a March over March and an April over April and a May over May. It's changed for March for some companies, like companies that are newer, don't have that good comparison. They can choose for March comparison period to be January or February of this year. So they can look at that to qualify. That program does have to be qualified every month, but it's an easy process, they say, through CRA and what have you. They're both taxable benefits. The 10% does have a maximum for employer up to $25,000, and it's up to $1,375 per employee. So
keep all of that straight.
I keep it straight by putting an actual summary right in front of me on a flip chart.
Not just me.
I shouldn't disclose that, right? I should have disclosed that. I was looking so good. I said I'm not going to keep that.
Well done.
So there are a couple other things that just came out. Nova Scotia actually has several things that people might have tapped into. The landlord rental deferral is over the deadline now, but there are some other things that they've done with deferring certain taxes, fees for businesses, all that stuff. But the two newest things that are important for people to know, because the provincial government looked at the federal government programs and said, where's a gap? And timelines was a big one, and it still is.
Yeah.
Governments are still working in record times. I mean, these are things that would roll out in months or years. I mean, this is weeks. Yeah. So the provincial government have actually come forward with a worker emergency bridge fund, which is $1,000 if you've had a layoff or your closure. It's to bridge to EI for workers, for employees. And that's a $1,000 grant. There's a small business impact grant from the provincial government that has just been released. And it's a one-time grant up to $5,000, but it's calculated on 15% of the sales from either April 2019 or February 2020, based on being a newer company or growth company or seasonal company, that sort of thing. So that's how it's calculated. There's obviously other criteria. I'm giving a very crude summary, but all of this information is summarized on the novascotia.ca coronavirus site and the canada.ca coronavirus site.
And Stacy did want to point out that it does qualify for not-for-profit and charities as well.
Oh, yes. My wife is going to kill me because I didn't mention that. Charities, non-for-profits are qualifying for a lot of this stuff. So, yes, it's not just private business. Wage subsidy they qualify for. Even the business impact grant they qualify for. Obviously, they have a bit of a different definition. Their revenue is funding or fundraising. And there are actually, I should note, there are some flexibility where, let's say, a nonprofit or charity had a one-time donation that was unusual in a month that would affect that percentage decrease from the previous year, that could be excluded. Let's say a charity or nonprofit gets government funding. They can choose to exclude that from their revenues. So there are some things there, some other details that can help in terms of being accessible or fitting the criteria.
Yeah, there certainly is a lot of information, and it's great to know that you're there to help small businesses in the area. So I did put his email in the comments, and I will put it in again, but it is jason@tcpep.ca. And if you tuned into this late, once we finish this broadcast, I'm going to put it up in a blog post on trurobuzz.com, and you'll be able to download the Excel sheet if you don't have it already, as well as rewatch this to do along with him actually with the sheets in front of you, if that's something you're interested in.
And because it's specific to businesses, please reach out. Like Alicia says, you'll have my contact info. Reach out. We're here for every business in the Colchester, Truro region. And I want to also plug the other regional enterprise networks. There are several across the province. So look for your own regional enterprise network and support from their business or economic development officers that can also walk you through some of these things.
Oh, we have a question there from Aaron. Proving lost revenue. If I didn't have 15% losses in March, Truro sales dropped 50%, but we expanded to Halifax delivery and lost money doing it, I don't qualify for wage subsidy. But now we're doing not-for-profit cooking, non-profit cooking, so revenue for April will be down 100%. If I don't qualify now, do I qualify a month from now?
Great question. It actually is a requalification and an individual qualification month by month. So if you don't qualify for March, you could still get that for April or for May.
That's a really important distinction. I bet a lot of people don't realize that.
And I think that, Aaron, I think that there's also the ability to talk. Now, I can't say this for sure, but because things are changing and they're getting a lot of feedback, I think there's an ability to talk to them about your unique situation to see if there's any flexibility being a new business. And the scenario that you had in terms of, I know Old Road Barbecue did some great things in trying to keep staff, and that has a negative impact because you tried to do that and then your sales didn't reflect that. That loss in sales didn't reflect that. I also know Old Road Barbecue is a new business, so they have those challenges. They did make some changes, but maybe not enough to fit that scenario, and maybe it's worth having the conversation to see if there's some further flexibility. And the Prime Minister and Bill Morneau also left it open that this can change again. They're going to get feedback. They asked for more feedback. This could change once again.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's amazing. And majority of the feed, when you get to look back from it, was thank you for doing this. Thank you for explaining it. So there's a lot of people with a lot of questions, and hopefully this is very helpful to anybody that needs it.
The one thing that I didn't talk about was there's other organizations that the federal government has resourced. So BDC, Business Development Corporation, the EDC, the Export Development Corporation. There's several other organizations, Farm Credit Canada for agriculture and farming. that have had an influx of money specific to this crisis. So reach out to those organizations should you want to talk to them, or go to their websites first, I should say, and then reach out if you fit certain criteria or want to explore some of that opportunity with them.
Perfect. Anything else you want to throw out there?
Just that we're here and we feel your pain as much as we can, and we're here to support you. So please, if you have any questions, comments, or need some support, reach out to us. And I can't thank you enough, Alicia, for Truro Buzz to allow us to do this live feed, to get it out to as many people as possible.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Like I said, I've had the great fortune of doing a lot of work with yourself and the other members of the TC PEP, and this is a time where we all need help, and anything we can do, anyone that has suggestions of what they'd like to see or anything we could bring to you, please, by all means, get in touch, info@trurobuzz.com. And just want to touch back that the newsletter is coming out tomorrow morning. If you haven't subscribed for it already, head on over to trurobuzz.com, or on the Facebook page on the menu there at the bottom. You can sign up for it there. And we're all just plugging along here.
All right.
Thank you, Jason and Alicia. Lots of information. I'll be sure to rewatch this tomorrow. And Andrew, hey buddy, says well done as well.
Well, thanks for tuning in. I know it's 7 o'clock to what is it now? A little bit past 8. So thanks for tuning in and watching, and we hope it is helpful.
Thank you so much, Jason, for all you're doing and all the help you have yet to give to everybody that needs it. We greatly appreciate you taking the time.
Anytime. Take care.
Have a great night, guys, and we'll see you soon.